Inside the Indiana Fever, something simply went horribly wrong. Furthermore, it didn't begin on the court. One remark, one comparison that no one anticipated, marked the beginning of music. And as soon as it became online, music quickly took off. In a few hours, supporters were not just perplexed, but also incensed. And before anyone has a chance to receive a clear answer, the individual in the middle of it all abruptly stopped talking and vanished entirely. This may sound unbelievable, but it really did occur. Standing in front of a throng, a top executive likened Caitlin Clark, the musician who has been selling out arenas, setting viewership records, and bringing the league into the public eye, to a phone case. It's just the accessory, not the product or the reason people wait in line. Additionally, or does something change the instant those words were spoken? Because this was more than a poor comparison. The biggest star in women's basketball music may not be treated as the foundation behind closed doors, but rather like something disposable. And fans immediately felt as though they were hearing the truth that the organization was reluctant to publicly acknowledge. And the response was swift and vicious once that notion gained traction. Social media took off. Season ticket holders began to doubt everything. Longtime fans of music who persevered through losing seasons felt betrayed all of a sudden. The executive at the center of the maelstrom then abruptly deactivated her Twitter account without providing a reason, just as the pressure was at its highest. No explanation, no declaration, just gone. At that point, this ceased to be a straightforward PR error, because it raises a far larger question when someone in that position vanishes rather than dealing with the issue. What precisely are they attempting to avoid? At first, the moment itself didn't feel very explosive. It happened during what was meant to be a standard public conversation on the franchise's future. It's the type of gathering where executives present their vision, make a few polished talking points, and then move on. However, there was a comparison hidden inside that exchange that altered everything right away. Music. The Fever's leadership used a corporate-style analogy to explain how the group views its long-term identity. Comparing the team to a tech company, something akin to an ecosystem model, the concept was straightforward on the exterior. And the system is the focal point, the franchise is the product, and all of these elements work together to generate value. However, the line that no one could ignore then appeared. Music. The phone case was Caitlin Clark, nor the product, nor the phone. In fact, people attend the music case, which is interchangeable and supports the system. Something incidental. And as soon as that analogy was made, the entire message fell apart. Music, because this is the reality that fans pointed out right away. No one is waiting in line for the system, they're waiting in line for her. None of the record-breaking TV ratings, the sold-out arenas, or the unexpected surge in national attention that was there before Caitlin Clark's arrival. Therefore, attempting to portray her as merely a component of a larger machine didn't sound purposeful. Instead, it appeared disjointed. Because of this, the response was indignation rather than merely criticism. An innocent commercial analogy was not heard by the fans. They overheard a company minimizing the one individual who made all the difference. They heard a front desk person attempting to maintain control over a story that had already moved past them. Music. There was no turning back once that interpretation gained traction, because this was no longer merely a matter of language. It has to do with what that phrasing made clear. The response didn't develop gradually. It exploded. Timelines were inundated with snippets, captions, and a single question that kept coming up within minutes of the video going viral. Music. Was that what they just said? Fans were analyzing the meaning rather than arguing about the words. Additionally, the moment sounded worse the more times it was replayed. Some of the first people to voice their opinions were season ticket holders. These viewers weren't just following the latest trend. Many of them felt taken by surprise because they were the ones who backed the team music before all of this hype. This was more than simply a poor analogy to them. It seemed as though the company was downplaying the main factor that had made the franchise relevant once more. Music after that, the media chose it. Clips began to circulate on popular platforms. All of a sudden, what was supposed to be a limited PR moment became a full-fledged story. There was no question in the headlines about whether it was an error. They were wondering what it showed. Music. Did the front desk really see Caitlin Clark this way? Was this deliberate? Was it honest or worse? Music. People were hoping for some sort of explanation, but it never materialized. Rather, something even more significant took place. The executive at the center of it all failed to respond to criticism, post a follow-up, or attempt to clarify the parallel. Just as the criticism peaked, her entire Twitter account vanished, and music vanished overnight. That choice alone increased the volume, because nothing is calmed down by silence in situations like this. Music. It intensifies it. Fans began making connections. Why not clarify if it was merely a misunderstanding? Why not correct it if it was taken out of context? It began to feel like confirmation when there was no reply. Music. At that moment, this wasn't merely a remark these days. It has to do with what the organization failed to disclose. And it becomes increasingly apparent that this was inevitable as you go deeper into the matter. Because numerous reports indicate that this was more than just a communication problem, rather, it was a lack of preparation. Following Caitlin Clark's draft, the expectations were straightforward. An exceptionally gifted rookie, a solid college record, and a little extra attention, all of which paled in comparison to what transpired next. The move into the league that followed wasn't typical. It was a rush. Demand for tickets surged. Sections of the arena that had previously been empty suddenly became crowded. Not only did television statistics improve, but they also exceeded forecasts. Almost immediately, games became national events. Music now for the important part. The organization reportedly didn't anticipate it. When insiders and writers have noted that the team and even certain regions of the league were unprepared for the extent of Clark's influence. There was no clear plan for what to do in the event that one person unexpectedly becomes the focal point of the entire sport. There was no framework in place to deal with the fan surge, the media wave, the pressure, or the associated expectations. Music. As a result, they have been responding to the situation rather than taking the lead. It's evident in the way things have developed. Uneven messaging, seemingly disjointed decisions, and public remarks that don't exactly reflect the reality that everyone else is witnessing. It appears that the company has been attempting to retrofit a system to accommodate a feature that was never intended. Why music? And that absolutely alters your perspective on the phone case comment. Perhaps it wasn't just a bad word choice. Perhaps it was an attempt, whether deliberate or not, to reframe the situation so that the organization regains control and gives the impression that the system still comes first, even though everything that is going on seems to indicate otherwise. Music. However, that such a separation is short-lived. Additionally, music begins to exert pressure from the inside as well as the outside as the gap between perception and reality continues to widen. Music. At this point, the focus shifts from a single remark to control. Because there's a tension that hasn't been discussed in public behind all of this, music. However, it's getting harder to ignore. On the one hand, the front office is attempting to uphold hierarchy, team structure, and the notion that no individual is greater than the company. That is the conventional approach, the secure one, and the one that CEOs feel at ease using. However, reality exists on the opposite side. Furthermore, corporate frameworks do not govern reality. Not only did Caitlin Clark take part in the fervor, she altered the league's overall tone. One source is responsible for all of the attention, revenue increases, and national focus. And when fans aren't interacting with the system, the standard system's first messaging begins to feel disconnected. They are interacting with an individual. The disconnect is that. Although the outside world already views Clark as the engine powering the organization, it seems that the organization is attempting to portray her as a component of a larger machine. And the more they adhere to that controlled narrative, the more it contradicts what is readily apparent to all. This is where it becomes uncomfortable. Power must be shifted in order to acknowledge that one actor has such a significant effect. It entails changing tactics. It entails constructing around her in ways that could put current leadership dynamics to the test. Furthermore, not every business is fast to act in that way, particularly when those in authority were present prior to the player's arrival. Rather, what we are witnessing, at least externally, is an effort to reconcile two incompatible realities. One in which the brand remains at the top of music, and one in which the player is already present. And eventually someone within the building begins to sense that tension as well, so it doesn't remain silent. What music? When it occurs, it seldom remains behind closed doors. Finally, someone stated it aloud. not a media personality, not a fan, not an outsider observing. The source of this was the locker room. Music and everything changed at that very moment. Sophie Cunningham didn't avoid it. She didn't hide behind evasive words or safe, polished responses. Rather, she brought up public responsibility, a topic for which the organization was obviously unprepared. Music. She discussed what had been developing for weeks, if not months, on her podcast. Additionally, the tone was deliberate rather than sentimental. She discussed the rough play Caitlin Clark has been subjected to, the hits, the missed calls, and the mounting annoyance over officiating that, in the opinion of many observers, hasn't met the level of protection you'd expect for a player drawing this much attention to the league. Furthermore, although others had previously alluded to it, Cunningham did not. She made it apparent that this was unacceptable. However, the focus suddenly turned inside, so she didn't stop there. The message was clear without describing every specific aspect. Beyond what was taking place on the court, there were other problems. There was a perception that the organization hasn't fully embraced what Clark stands for, and this perception has been silently propagating. Rather than relying on, there has been reluctance or even opposition at the time. And that's what set this apart. After a difficult game, this wasn't frustration. This was not a spontaneous response. According to reports, this was a deliberate choice to speak. By knowing exactly how it would be received, and a hint that at least one voice in that locker room was no longer prepared to keep music matters private. Furthermore, her behavior had already been conveying the same message to anyone who believed that this had happened out of the blue. When things go physical on the court, Cunningham has been among the first to intervene. When Clark makes contact and no one calls, she reacts directly, not delicately, music. Game after game, it has been taking place in real time. Thus, when she eventually let go of the court, it didn't seem unexpected. It was reassuring. She has been demonstrating it. She said it now. When a player crosses that threshold and publicly confronts not only her opponents but also the system surrounding her, it ceases to be a private matter. And the league as a whole begins to music watch. At that point, the situation went beyond a point where it is difficult to go back, since what had before been conjecture began to seem plausible. This was more than simply annoyance behind the scenes. It was a split. Insider rumors and reports started hinting at a deeper issue than disagreements over tactics or difficult defeats. This was about identification, music about the true nature of this squad and what it is intended to develop into. It became increasingly evident that different people within the building had different perspectives as the tension increased. The organizational vision is on one side. The notion that the long-term structure, the franchise, and the system must always come first. That the brand always comes first, regardless of how big a player gets. One, it's under control. It is foreseeable. Additionally, it makes sense from an executive perspective. On the other hand, the players have to deal with reality on a daily basis. The throng is visible to them. The sound is audible to them. They know exactly why the spotlight has suddenly become so bright. And there's no misunderstanding when viewed from that angle. Caitlin Clark is not only a component of the system now matters because of her. Furthermore, it doesn't just feel bad to treat her poorly, it seems deliberate. That's where the division starts. It doesn't remain silent for very long. Once that kind of division develops within a locker room, small moments begin to bear greater weight, conversations change, and energy shifts. Music transforms what were once inside conversations into outward tension. Additionally, it provides that division a voice when one player, like Cunningham, comes forward in public. According to reports, some members of the organization believe the action goes too far, crosses a line, and challenges authority in a way that undermines stability. Others, however, have a different perspective on music. They saw it as essential and long overdue, as someone finally expressing what has been simmering beneath the surface. And that's the reason this is so important. Because wins and losses are no longer relevant in this situation. This isn't about a single interview or comment. This is about two entirely distinct music ideologies attempting to coexist in the same area, yet neither side is prepared to give up. And as history has demonstrated, music eventually has to give when a team reaches this stage. And if all of this seems familiar, it's because we've witnessed a similar circumstance previously, only on a far larger scale. When Michael Jordan joined the NBA in the 1980s, the league did not treat him like the star he would become right away. There were times when the system took precedence, when physical, music performance was unrestrained, and even his personal team relationships weren't quite consistent with what he stood for. And the league took some time to make the necessary adjustments. Then, however, something became unavoidable. Music Jordan wasn't just another outstanding athlete. He was the product, the reason fans were paying attention, and the reason the league was expanding at a rate never seen before in music, before observed. And everything changed when that fact was proven. And both marketing and officiating underwent changes. Music. He became the focal point of how the NBA promoted itself. They had to, not because they wanted to. Music people in the league are now beginning to make subtle analogies. Caitlin Clark is not being compared to Michael Jordan. The point is not that. The pattern is the point. A talent from a different generation shows up. The focus erupts. The system finds it difficult to adapt. There is resistance for a brief period of time, an attempt to treat it like business as usual. However, business as usual doesn't function in times such as this, because hesitancy becomes dangerous when a player alters the league's overall worth. Music. Ignoring it gets expensive. Mishandling it can have repercussions that extend well beyond a single team. Music by the caution is that. The Indiana music fever and the WNBA in particular are currently at a similar crossroads. If you don't adjust to the current situation, you run the risk of missing the crucial moment that will shape the future. Music. The unsettling reality is that those choices are no longer made behind closed doors. Everyone is observing how this develops. Moments like music, this don't remain unresolved for very long if history is any indication. Now, everything depends on what transpires next, because Caitlin Clark will continue to do what she has been doing regardless of how loud the uproar grows. Attend, produce, and garner unprecedented publicity for the league. It's not changing. The true question is whether others in her immediate vicinity will realize what they have before it's too late. Late, because these kinds of moments are rare. This is more than just a gifted rookie. This is more than a fleeting surge in interest. This is a change, a unique opportunity for one player to transform music, a whole team, and even an entire league into something greater than it has ever been. Music, when such a chance arises, you are unable to take caution. You firmly construct around it. Music, however, such clarity doesn't seem to exist at the moment. Rather, we are witnessing a battle to strike a balance between control and reality, reluctance, and conflicting messaging. And the longer that goes on, the more pressure there is. Not just from fans, but also from the league itself, the locker room, the media, and music. Because this is the one thing that history has demonstrated. The results are rarely neutral when organizations don't align with generational talent, or it compels transformation. Sometimes music is public, sometimes it's internal, and sometimes it results in conclusions that no one anticipated months ago. Rumors, conjecture, and reports are already beginning to circle. Even if nothing is certain, the fact that such discussions are taking place at all gives you a clear indication of where this is going. The Indiana Fever have a rare and important asset that, if handled properly, might define their future for years to come. Because someone else will ultimately do it if they don't. The subsequent action in this narrative, perhaps it won't wait until the